They say that history is written by the winners. Well, I think history is actually written by those who survive Sunday dinners with the family. Many of these dinners, you have stories that are embarrassing, educational, and even funny, maybe even a combination of all three. One story I always enjoyed being told in my family was back when my mom and dad were courting. This is something I discovered people did back in the day for dating. My dad would go to my mom's parents' house and they would have their date there in the living room. My mom's little sister would come around and play pranks because she wasn't getting attention anymore. Or maybe she really wanted to break my parents up. Either way, my mom assured her, hey, I'm still going to be there for you, but right now I'm trying to find a husband. And eventually my auntie was okay with it. And I guess that's a good thing, because if not, my brother and I probably wouldn't be here today. Whether it's a family member, a friend, or a complete stranger, here's the truth. Storytelling helps prepare us and the next generation and future generations for things to come. Have you ever sat down with the elder in your community and all of a sudden the line, back in the day, comes up, and then their story begins to unfold like a good Netflix documentary? How many of you know the story of how your grandparents met? Or the story of how your parents might have struggled when they were younger? And let's be real, some of us probably only have the edited version of that story. You know the one where everybody did everything right and never got in any trouble. How many of you know the story about where your mom grew up at? Or who you act most in the family alike? Well, these things aren't just a part of questions that are a part of a Sunday family dinner. They're actually a part of the Do You Know scale developed by psychologists at Emory University. And here's what their research found. The more a person knows about their family history, the stronger they are, the more self-confidence they have, and the more they are stronger when they're faced with stress. I think about the many stories that my grandparents, parents, aunties, and uncles, and people in the community told me growing up. They told many stories about how life wasn't always fair, how they overcome racism and barriers that were put in place to keep them down. They told these stories not just to reminisce on the past, but to prepare me for the future. My grandparents used to talk about how they overcome racism, not to just dwell on struggles, but to give me strength in times that I would need it. Because can you believe that even in 2026, a friend of mine and I found ourselves at an event where our presence was made not to feel welcomed. And some people questioned why we were there, even though we were invited guests to that event. But it was in those moments that I thought about all the stories that my parents and grandparents had taught me, because I knew in this moment I was prepared. I knew that regardless of treatment, that I stood my ground with the same grace and dignity that many had done before me, because I belonged there. My dad used to tell many stories growing up about how he grew up on a farm, one that my family owned. He used to grow produce and they took care of animals and things like that. And I used to think to myself that in the future, if all the grocery stores went away, my family was good, because my dad knew how to grow some stuff and my mom knew how to cook. My mom used to tell stories about overcoming limitations. She talked about how her generation wasn't always encouraged to follow their dreams, but she encouraged my brother and I to go for ours. So when I think about these things, I realize that I'm not starting from scratch, but I'm starting from legacy. So when I stand before you today, I'm not standing here just as Kareem, but I'm standing here as a collection of all the stories of the people who came before me. Stories that give you access, stories that help with your personal agency, and stories that help shape advocacy. Stories give us access to a deeper connection to people and their situations. I grew up in Macon, Georgia, in an area called Fort Hill. Grew up around educators, business owners, and many fun times of playing around the neighborhood and in the yard with my brother. But the story often told about the area that I grew up in was a story of gang violence and people battling addiction. Now, when you're a child, certain stories are kept from you. And I realized as I got older that some of these things hit closer to home, because I discovered that people in my own family had overcome addiction, and you also discovered that some people were still battling it. One particular relative of mine did become more open about his struggles as I got older. And as these stories unfolded, it was really powerful, because it helped me with shaping certain decisions when I was faced with certain obstacles in my life. At this point, it had removed that barrier that had me disconnected, and it gave me a personal connection to it. Because again, it's one thing to be told not to do something when you're a child because it's bad for you. But it hits totally different when someone can tell you the price of addiction. Again, it becomes personal. Our stories give us agency. Our stories give us the agency to move beyond being passive observers of our own lives, but to being active participants. When you share your story, whether it be publicly or privately, you begin to make sense of your life experiences. You begin to shape your values, and you begin to shape your future. Oftentimes over the years, I would go back and read my journal from middle school, and in that journal, I told a lot of stories about being a shy kid, trying to navigate his way through life, trying to find friends. Also during this time, my mom had me writing affirmations to speak confidence into myself even when I didn't believe it. And I discovered something powerful in this process because my stories not only gave me a chance to reflect, but I used this reflection to change myself over the years. It gave me the power to grow out of my shell, to build my confidence in myself and the decisions that I was making in life. So your stories give you a chance to reflect, but they also give you a chance to rewrite. They give you a chance to rewrite old narratives and turn them into new ones rooted in purpose, growth, and strength. And this is where stories become bigger than us, because stories don't just give us a chance to shape ourselves, but they give us a chance to shape the world around us. Think about advocacy. Stories give us a chance to humanize issues and ignite and inspire people to make change. Think about campaigns, community work, and movements. The civil rights movement was being documented, but a lot of the times the media coverage on it was being downplayed or skewed by those who owned the media at the time, making it appear not to be as bad as it was. This was until March the 7th, 1965, in Selma, Alabama. A couple of weeks earlier, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had scolded Life magazine Philip Schilke for helping demonstrators being knocked down by police. Dr. King said, "The world doesn't know this happened because you didn't photograph it." This time around, though, the television cameras were rolling, and it captured the assault that was unleashed on the demonstrators. This time around, what was a local movement turned into a national civil rights event. It took hours for the footage to be flown from Alabama to the television network headquarters in New York. But when it aired that night, Americans were appalled by the sights and sounds of what became known as Bloody Sunday, an event that did help push for voting rights in this country. Because this time around, the world could not ignore it. Nearly 50 million Americans witnessed what happened, and so communities listened. Policymakers made change, and the world listened. And if you're not documenting your stories, you're leaving your future up for interpretation. So when you're documenting your stories, whether it's in writing, audio, podcasting, video, or even in conversations, you're doing more than just creating memories, you're engineering impact. Just like the impact you receive from those stories that you were told back at home. So the next time your grandmother is telling you a story, don't interrupt her. Don't tell her that you've heard it before, because you might have heard it, but you didn't really understand it. And one day, you'll be the one telling that story, probably adding a little extra to it. Let's be real, we all do it. But that's the beauty of it all. Your stories give you access. Your stories give you the chance to have personal agency to grow, and your stories help with advocacy. So go out there and live your life. Document it, share it, and tell it. Because the story you tell today just might be the reason someone believes in their tomorrow.